by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partners, Kevin Stone and Adam Kirchin. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Doing good, boys. How are you?
Doing good, you?
Good, good. And as always, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you are thinking about selling your current home or purchasing your first home, give our friend Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846, or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. We are officially in a real estate season now. The market is starting to pick up. There's more inventory out there. You want an experienced loan officer and lender on your side to help you navigate through that process. With 27 years of experience, Herb Devine is that guy. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, gentlemen, Patriots have been busy here. Of course, today was day one of the offseason program. The Patriots players are now in town, working out, preparing for the 2024 season. Of course, tomorrow will be our first media availability, if you will, of the upcoming season. Tight end Hunter Henry and safety Jabril Peppers are scheduled to meet with the media at noon. The other big news, of course, yesterday was Kyle Duggar signing a 4-year, $58 million extension. $32 million of that is guaranteed. The deal could end up north of $60 million. And I kind of want to start there, and then we'll backtrack because I want to get your thoughts on the offseason program. And then I also want to talk about the quarterback visits that were among the top 30 visits that the Patriots have scheduled for last week and this week. But let's start with that Duggar extension. Of course, they had placed a transition tag on him earlier this offseason. Duggar publicly said he wasn't happy about that. He didn't like it. Ultimately, the Patriots come back to the table with him, and they sign him to a 4-year, $58 million extension. The money makes him one of the 6 highest paid safeties in the league. Your thoughts on the deal? Do you like it? Are you happy with it? Are you not happy with it? Where do you stand on it?
Adam, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm glad he's back on the team. Like I'm not too into how much they gave him versus how much they should have gave him, all that stuff. I think as long as they got the player back, it's good. He's a good player. I mean, if we rewind to a couple years ago when he got picked, everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" From from a very random school for football, it seemed like. But he's turned into a pretty good player. Is he perfect? No, but I think he's one of the reasons that defense is so good. He makes a lot of plays out there. He gets caught maybe over pursuing sometimes. I don't know, but I feel like I'm glad he's back on the team. I think he's one of the reasons they have a good defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good move just in the sense of I think it's pretty clear all offseason culture has been the main focal point with bringing guys back. So in that regard, it's good. I would have rather, maybe not rather, but I would have liked to have seen Justin Simmons on this team. I just think overall he's a better player, but it's another good step towards, I guess, building trust, if you will, or more goodwill in that locker room of signing a guy who's gone about doing things the right way ever since he got here. And so in that regard, I think it was good. But on the field, I feel like you could have done better. But he's a good player, and he'll help this team. So it's a wash for me. It's I wasn't shocked, but again, I would have liked to have seen maybe another name in here too. But good signing overall.
Yeah, I like it. I know that there's a lot of people that have been critical of it, saying that they spent too much, that they overpaid. They didn't overpay for him. He's a 3-by-3 safety. He's a guy that plays all downs in all situations. And look, the going rate for a player who does the things that he does is $13 to $15 million. That's the neighborhood you're going to have to pay if you want to get a player like him. That's where they came in with him. It's $14 million and change. I think Duggar gets unfairly criticized. I know he's had some issues in pass coverage the last couple of years. I think people are still stuck on the fact that they drafted him in the second round out of Lenore Ryan, but they need to get over that. He's a good football player. He fits what they want to do schematically. I like the signing. I didn't think there was a safety in the market that was better than him. I didn't feel that they could have done better in the draft. I felt that it was important that he comes back. I think he's a big part of this defense. And they got it done. And look, I mean, again, you got to keep one thing in mind. People look at these contracts forget about the total sum of the contract. It's about the guaranteed money in the NFL. They gave him $32 million. Okay. And at the end of the day, that's not terrible money for a player of his caliber. It's only a 4-year deal that they've got some flexibility within it. The cap's just going to keep going up and up and up. So they're going to be able to afford him in the next couple of years as it is. They had the cap space to do it, and they got it done. And I know that a lot of people are looking at this and saying, okay, how is this team better than the 4-13 team that they were a year ago? And that's a fair question. But the one thing I will say is the Patriots' plan and how they want to operate the next couple of years is really starting to come to light here now. They're going to be leaning on this defense in their running game. They're going to take a quarterback at 3. They're going to develop that quarterback. They're going to take their time. And in the meantime, they're going to count on Jacoby Brissett making some plays in the passing game. They're going to look to run the football. They're going to lean on this defense, and they're going to try to stay competitive next year and hope that by the time they get to 2025, they can build more of the roster around the quarterback they drafted. That's obviously the plan here moving forward. But again, we applauded the play of this defense last year. I think a lot of us were on board with how good the defense was. It was a top 10 defense in the league, and they certainly played like it most of the year. Yeah, they had a couple of duds sprinkled in there, but overall the defense kept them in games and helped them win a couple of games down the stretch. To me, I don't have a problem with investing and bringing those guys back because, again, I think the plan is easy to see here. They're going to take a quarterback and they're going to slow play this rebuild. They're not going to rush it to try to get back into Super Bowl contention within a year or two. They're going to try to do it the right way. Keeping a guy like Duggar is paramount. They do that. Now it'll be interesting to see, do they get to the table with Barmore before training camp starts and they get him into a long-term deal? They obviously like the pieces they have on defense, and that has been the focal point, keeping those guys. And again, I'm okay with it because that's the more talented side of the football with this team, that they're going to be pretty good on defense against next year, barring a run of injuries. You might as well invest on that side of the ball this offseason and then shift and focus more on the offense in the draft and next offseason. As I mentioned, of course, the Patriots also opened up offseason workouts today. As part of the new CBA, it got later and later and later. It seems like the season ended a year ago, but here we are. This is officially now Jerod Mayo's team. The players have reported, as I mentioned earlier, Hunter Henry, Jabril Peppers, scheduled to meet with the media tomorrow at noon. And Kevin, what are you expecting those guys to talk about? I know you're a big vibe, culture, feeling it out type of guy here. What are you expecting from those guys tomorrow?
Well, before I answer, I want to ask you, as a coach, were you surprised that Mayo didn't take advantage of the extra days?
Yes and no. I mean, on the one hand, you want to take advantage of them because you want more time with your team. But on the other hand, I say no because you could probably use that extra time to really get everything in place and lock everything down. And so when they do show up, you're ready to go. I'm not saying that they weren't ready to go a week ago, but maybe they wanted that extra week so that they can make sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's and make sure that the offseason program was in place.
Yeah, I was just slightly surprised. I just wanted to get your take on it. I'm not expecting a ton tomorrow. Obviously, Henry re-signing, that'll come up, and why he re-signed and wanted to be part of this. And I think Peppers, you guys both know he's a character whenever he talks. So I'm sure he'll have a couple of good lines here and there, and he'll get asked about the Mayo era and what it's going to be like. But I'm not expecting anything earth-shattering or anything like that. It'll be a very softball type day tomorrow, I think.
I kind of want to know. I wonder how much guys do this, but like how much film they watch of prospects, just to be interested. Like I'm sure a bunch of these guys have watched Drake Maye games or Jayden Daniels games or JJ McCarthy games. Like, and do they have opinions on it? Like, do they have any, like, maybe useless would be the wrong word, but it's just like, they're not a decision maker in there, but I'm curious to see if these guys get into the draft at all and how much they watch. I'm sure with Peppers, like, and having a guy like JJ McCarthy who went to his school at Michigan, what are his thoughts on it? I was always been curious about that.
And of course, on Thursday, Chukwuma Okorafor and Armon Watts, both free agent additions this offseason from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They will be meeting with the media at noon. Yeah, look, I mean, again, you kind of want to get a sense of where guys are at, how their offseason has gone, what is their level of interest and excitement about the new regime. We haven't really heard from the players since Mayo's hiring. It's been about Mayo, and we had that media availability with the coordinators a couple months ago, but we really haven't heard from the players. And so I do think that it'll be a good opportunity to gauge their level of excitement for the upcoming season and what they're looking forward to. And the other thing is, I think that it'll give you an opportunity, especially on Thursday, to see, okay, why did Okorafor and Watts sign here? What appealed about Mayo? What appealed about the Patriots? Was it strictly an opportunity to play and get paid what you were looking to get paid for? Do they see this as not only a place where they can play and get paid, but also a place where they can compete and have a good experience? So it'll be great to hear from the players because, like I said, up until this point, the onus has been on Mayo and the new staff and Wolf and the front office and what they're doing. It'll be nice to see what the players think in regards to what's going on up there thus far. Of course, the other big conversation regarding the Patriots is top 30 visits. They're going to be taking place all the way into the week going into the draft. Drake Maye was in town last week. Jayden Daniels in town today. J.J. McCarthy is also scheduled for a top 30 visit for the Patriots. And the bottom line is this. They've scheduled these top 30 visits with these guys. These are the three guys that are in play at 3. And I know there were a lot of people last week in the local media that were dismissive of the J.J. McCarthy talk. And they would point to Daniel Jeremiah's rankings and say, see, he has him ranked in the 20s. There's no way the Patriots would take him at 3. I think it's a smoke screen. I think it's ludicrous. I don't think it is a smoke screen. I think he is in play there. Now, is he in play there more than Daniels or May? No, I think that those guys are more in play there than he is. Is there a smoke screen element here to try to generate buzz for the pick so that they could potentially trade it? Sure, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if they're talking up McCarthy so that they could potentially see if they could generate any trade interest. But I will also say this. I do think that there is some genuine interest there in J.J. McCarthy. I said this to you guys last week. I don't think that this is something that's just simply a smoke screen or them trying to see if they can generate any interest in the pick. I think that they are genuinely interested in the player and would entertain it at 3. So, again, take that for what it's worth, but to dismiss it and poo-poo it like some people around here did last week, I think that that's foolish. J.J. McCarthy, whether people like it or not, and I said this on Patriots Pulse as well, he's going to go in the top 10. Doesn't matter what we think. He's not getting out of the top 10, whether it's here at 3 or the Giants at 6 or another team that trades up potentially and trades for him. Bottom line is I think it would be a shocker at this point if he fell out of the top 10.
Yeah, I think, I'm not a huge McCarthy guy, but I'm not saying that, I would know everything about quarterback evaluation. I'm just somebody with an opinion. And there are enough football people, in the, coaches and stuff like that really like this guy for it to be a legitimate interest. Now, again, here's part of this is how is the problem I have with a lot of draft discussion, because if McCarthy had gotten this push like he got in the last 2 months, if he had gotten that in February, then nobody would care. But it happened after everybody supposedly had these opinions about him. And so, I think he could be just as good as some of these other. I mean, look, when he was a high school player, I think he was a 5-star prospect.
Yes.
So,
yeah. One of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the country.
Well, now, and wasn't he an IMG?
Yeah.
And so, if you're an IMG guy, you're talented. Okay, it's just obviously he didn't throw as much as Daniels or Mayer and these guys, whatever, but they had a good running game. And now the part about, oh, well, everybody loves how he is in the room. People love how he is at the whiteboard or whatever. So those are all real things. And so if enough pro pro scouts, pro coaches, seem to like the guy. You really got to do your homework on him. Find out if find out what ticks with this guy. So it's I again, like, I'm not a big McCarthy guy. Maybe I haven't seen the right film, whatever. But to say that he doesn't belong in that conversation is kind of silly. He's a super talented guy who just won a national championship. He belongs in that room, and I think in some ways, that's gonna be, to me, the most intriguing visit, is if he hits it off with the coaching staff, because I'm like a lot of people. If Jayden Daniels goes at 2 or Drake Maye goes at 2, and you're left with these 2 guys, are the Patriots going to stick their neck out and go for McCarthy, knowing they could miss out on a Maye or Daniels? So I think it's probably one of the more intriguing parts of this draft, according, just in my opinion.
So I've fallen in love with the idea of McCarthy, and I think part of it is because it still allows you to trade down if you want to. Now, again, you don't have to take him at 3. You can do multiple things here and go get him. So I like the idea of that, and I do like the idea. It seems like every single draft season, someone comes out of the woodwork, and gets this late hype. And now I know his started right around the national championship, but there's always that other guy that's kind of thrown into the mix seemingly. And I like the idea of taking that guy just because it's not the conventional way of doing things, or the way that people assume the draft board was going to play out. So I do like the idea of being different in that regard. And look, the kid wins. I mean, he just won a national championship. Yeah, he had a good team around him, but he's been good for a couple years now. So I think it's real. I do think there's an element of that whole Michigan thing with another quarterback. I know it's probably so far down the line, but I do think maybe even subconsciously that it might seep into the mindset there a little bit. But I do think that hype is real, and I would not hate him being the guy if he is the guy, and mostly because, again, as you guys well know, I am team trade down, and I think he could be your guy in that situation.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be there. I don't. I think it's a pipe dream on your part, my friend. I don't see a scenario where if they trade down past. I mean, who are you going to trade down with, first of all?
No,
that's the thing you got to think about. Anybody that's trading up is trading up to take a quarterback. So if you trade down, you're not getting J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Because realistically speaking, obviously Williams goes 1. Let's say Daniels goes 2. Now you're sitting there at 3. Okay, you trade down. Whoever trades up takes Drake Maye. Okay, now depending on where you trade down to, that'll determine whether or not he falls to you. I could see a scenario where the Giants take him at 6. I know a lot of people think Malik Neighbors will end up there, or Marvin Harrison if Neighbors would be the first receiver to go, possibly a Rome Odunze. But the way I see it, I don't think if you're the Patriots and you like McCarthy enough that you think, all right, we could trade down and still get him. I don't see how there's no chance you get him if you trade out of the top 10. And I think realistically speaking, if you do trade down, it has to be the right trade partner. And so who is that? Arizona knows that the Patriots are more than likely taking a quarterback. They don't have to trade up to take Harrison. They could sit there and take him. Then you got the Chargers at 5. Are they a possibility as a team that might be willing to trade up to 3, jump up a couple spots and either get Harrison or Neighbors? Maybe that's a possible landing spot. But the Giants, I think, are going to be in play for a quarterback at 6. Tennessee won't be at 7. They'll probably go offensive tackle. But then you've got Atlanta. You've got all these other teams. Atlanta won't be either. They just signed Cousins. But then you're going to get into 11 and 12 and 13 where you have Minnesota, Denver, Las Vegas. Those 3 teams all want a quarterback. Those 3 teams are going to be willing to trade up to draft a quarterback. A team like the Chargers could say, all right, we'll trade you 5 for 11, Minnesota. Give us this, and that. Next year's number 1. Well, if that happens and you decide to trade out for whatever reason and Minnesota leapfrogs you, they're going to get the quarterback. So lot of scenarios here. I was team trade down for a long time, but I still think ultimately you've got to roll the dice here and hope you land the franchise quarterback. We've talked about it all winter and spring. We're going to continue to talk about it for another couple of weeks until the draft. But I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to me. I think you've got to be in a position where you can draft a potential franchise quarterback, and your best odds at getting one in this draft is if you stay in the top 3 and take one of those 3 guys. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show, sponsored by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by Kevin Stone and Adam Kirkchin. Just a reminder, if you're looking to sell your current home or purchase your first home, give Herb Devine a call at 781-254-2846. You can also email him at herb@mortgageright.com. With 27 years of experience, Herb is the loan officer and lender you need to help you get into your next home. If you're ready to talk to Herb, again, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. Ken Mathias checks in. Thanks for checking in, Ken. Question for you, gentlemen. Out of the top 330 visits, which one are you most excited about? I'm assuming he's talking about the quarterback. So which one are you most excited about? We already know where Kirkson's going to go with this.
Well, no, I kind of think McCarthy's is the most intrigued because he's kind of like, as Kevin was saying, is the kind of the wild card of the group. I mean, I'm obviously like a big Jayden Daniels guy, so I think that would be fun. But I don't know. Like, I think a lot is going to come from that McCarthy one. Like, if he really impresses them, I think he could jump into that spot. And I think they kind of already know what they've got with May and Daniels a little bit, and I think McCarthy could just change things up in a good or a bad way.
Yeah, it's McCarthy for me, but I will say this is the 3rd time that they're meeting with Drake Maye now. So there's clearly, interest there, and maybe it's just due diligence, but 3 times feels like a lot.
It's not due diligence. I think you bring up a great point, Kevin. It is a lot. And I said this 2 weeks ago, read the tea leaves. If he's on the board at 3, he's the guy. I really genuinely believe he's the guy. Even if McCarthy's sitting there, I think it would be an upset if they took McCarthy over him. I really believe that they like Drake Maye the best. I think he's the guy. And look, it's also the time of year now where you're going to start listening to everybody tear these kids down and try to paint them as future busts. And you really, as a Patriots fan, you really have to block out the noise now. And you really just have to put on the earmuffs and pretend you're not hearing them, because every other person out there in the national media is going to tell you how Drake Maye's got bust written all over him. Go watch his tape. He didn't dominate ACC competition, like as if he's playing, as if he's playing in Division 2 or 3. I mean, the ACC is a pretty damn good conference, okay? I mean, you've got Florida State, Clemson, NC State, among others. He played really good competition. So stop with the nonsense. Caleb Williams, who's this quote-unquote generational talent, yeah, he dominated the Pac-12, and what did USC win with him? Nothing. So at the end of the day, I don't care if he dominated or not. It's all about speculation and what could he be down the road. That's what you're drafting here. You're not drafting, you're taking into consideration what he did at NC State, and that's a part of that process. But at the end of the day, when you draft any player, you're drafting with an eye to the future. You're projecting as to how they fit your scheme and what they could be. And at the end of the day, that's what you're drafting in Drake Maye. I think you're spot on. This was their 3rd meeting with him last week. I think he's the leader in the clubhouse. I don't think they love Daniels. I think they like Daniels. And if Daniels is there and Maye is gone, then I think he could potentially be the pick. But I will say this. I think they like McCarthy more than Daniels. What do you think about that?
I agree with that.
It's possible.
I think they do. I think they like McCarthy more than Daniels. And I've talked to people around the league that have told me that the 2 reasons why people in football, people in the NFL like J.J. McCarthy more than the media does is, 1, he played for Jim Harbaugh, which that carries a lot of weight with coaches and executives around the NFL. And 2, his fit in the modern game. And the West Coast offense, the Shanahan, McVay, Stefanski now, we can throw him in there. That offense is dominating the league now, and he would be a great fit in that offense. And so that's why I think, from what people are telling me, people around the league like him a lot more than the media does. We shall see. Ken checks back in. He says, if May is the guy, what's the real chance he's ready by either week 1 or possibly midseason? Go ahead, Adam, and then I'll answer that.
Okay, well, just as you were saying, like, the reason why I don't think teams love Daniels is because I think some people get scared by a quarterback who can run, even one as efficiently as he does. But like they don't like. I think a lot of coaches don't want to have a running quarterback, and they don't want to put like designed runs into the offense and all this stuff. Like, I think some people like a running quarterback. Others, they don't want to change their offense too much. They don't want to risk a guy getting hurt in the 3rd week of the season. Just like all that stuff. As much as people like a guy who's a good athlete, a lot of them just don't want to mess with changing their offense around.
Real quick on whoever they take at 3. I know the correct move is probably sitting them, but can you afford to do that if you're the Patriots with this fan base? Like, will people tolerate the number 3 overall pick sitting? I'm just not.
I don't think. Well,
they have
okay.
to. I get it.
I think that's a valid question. However, if you want them to develop him the right way, and you want them to do it the right way, then yeah, he needs to sit at least for a period of time. Now, let's say it is Drake Maye, and he goes out and has a great camp. Obviously, he's your starter week 1, and that comes back to Ken's question. But just to go back to what Adam said real quick, after going back and watching a handful of games on Jayden Daniels in the past month, the way I see it with him is the Lamar Jackson comp is stupid. It's idiotic. It's lazy. It's one of the reasons why I hate comps this time of year, because people just throw them out there. They make these stupid, lazy-ass comps, and they think that that's a legitimate comp. Lamar Jackson was a much better athlete coming out of Louisville than Jayden Daniels is. When I look at Jayden Daniels, I see a lot of Deshaun Watson. I see some C.J. Stroud. I think he's much better. I think he's a much more polished passer than Jackson was coming out of Louisville. I think 100%. He's much better in the pocket than Jackson was.
100%.
I don't see Lamar Jackson there. I see Deshaun Watson, a guy that has that sneaky athleticism that you can put some design run stuff for him in if you want, but he's a guy that's going to be able to play in and out of the pocket, and if he gets out of the pocket, he's got that plus arm strength that he can make throws in all 3 levels, and he can extend plays and get you first downs with his legs. He's not a runner per se in the NFL. I see more of those guys than Lamar Jackson. But to come back to Ken's question, if May is the guy, what are the real chances he's either the starter by week 1 or midseason? I think the chances are pretty good. But again, I just think their mindset, I think, with Elliott Wolf, this front office, you got McAdoo, you got Van Pelt, you've got that Packer influence. I think their goal, especially if it's Drake Maye, is going to be to see if you could sit him and see if you could sit him for the season if possible, and then he's your starter in 2025. Look, even when you look at the Chargers a couple years ago, because a lot of people compare Drake Maye to Justin Herbert, they were going to sit Herbert. And then Tyrod Taylor suffers that stupid freak rib injury in pregame warmups, and that was the end of Tyrod Taylor's short tenure with the Chargers. So, could Drake Maye potentially win the starting job if he's assuming he's a guy in a couple of weeks? Could he win the starting job in August? Yeah, he could. But, I mean, again, to me, he would have to be head and shoulders better than Jacoby Brissett to be the starter week 1. I don't see that. He'd have to really pop to be the guy. I don't see it. I don't think it'll be a Mac Cam situation here. I think they're going to do whatever they can to sit this kid, whoever it is, as long as possible. All right, let's shift gears here now, and we're going to talk some college football. And Kevin, you were at Harvard on Saturday for our spring visit with the Crimson. You got a chance to talk to Coach Orich. You got a chance to talk to Scotty Woods. Just some overall thoughts on Harvard's practice? What did you see? You know, you're a big vibe guy. Are they bigger? Are they smaller? I mean, what are you seeing around there?
It is the exact same Harvard team we have all grown accustomed to. Big bodies up front, both sides. Good talent at receiver. Running backs are going to be phenomenal. I mean, for years now, it's been a 1-2 punch. They have another one with Xavier Bascon,
Yeah.
and name is escaping.
Xavier Bascon, of course, played at Swampscott, and he was
and other name is
a big
escaping
part of
right
that
now.
offense 3 years ago.
Yeah, and there's another kid there too. Can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but they have a great 1-2 punch there. Again, receivers are good. Scott Woods was all over the place, and then QB competition is going to bring out the best in both guys. It's the same two guys as last year, and Craig and Zaprima, and both had their moments when I was there on Saturday morning. The vibe, as you mentioned, it's still very much the same, and I think a huge part of that is, guys like Joel Lamb, guys like Coach Larkey, a lot of important faces and names in that program still there and sort of making sure that things are as normal and as routine as they can be after losing a coach for, let's face it, 30 years of doing something the same way. Something's going to change, but overall, the feeling around the program, it felt the exact same. And in terms of team structure, it's the same kind of team. I don't see any reason why they can't compete for the Ivy League title again.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things sometimes is like sometimes there's a coaching change and you need more change. And sometimes you make a coaching change and it's good to bring some of the other stuff along with you. It's like it doesn't hurt to be, keeping it going from what you had before. I'm sure there's tons of little things that I don't know about, but I'm excited to see what Bascon does. He had a very good career at Swampscott, and then I think he did a PG year at Phillips Exeter.
Yep.
And so, he's just again, just another impact player at Harvard. I remember years ago when I first covered them a little bit, and they had Aaron Shamplin at running back, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is the fastest dude I've ever seen! Like he could fly." So I mean, I think that it's great with Harvard. Like the talent they get is unbelievable because they're Harvard and they can get a lot of the best players in the country. And again, like one of the things I always tell people is you'd be surprised how many FBS offered guys end up at Harvard or a Yale or a Dartmouth. It's pretty eye opening. So I'm hoping for another great season out of Harvard. They'll be definitely fun to watch come when the season comes around.
Yeah, the other running back.
That's real quick too. I was going to say, not to cut you off, Stone. I was going to say, you mentioned Lamb, you mentioned Larkey. How I think to your point about the continuity, I think keeping the majority of that staff together was huge.
Yeah, no, I asked Scott Woods about it after practice. And he said just having those familiar faces, again, you don't know what to expect with a brand new head coach and frankly a Princeton guy. So there's probably a little bit of I guess apprehension there for players too. But they all love him. The offense sure loved him right away. And the offense was very impressive, I will say. Just various drives throughout what they call scrimmage Saturday. They moved the ball very well, both on the ground and through the air. So it's a talented team still. The other running back I was mentioning too, Isaiah Abbey. That 1-2 punch with him and Bascon. Both run hard, both broke off several big runs. So again, it's the same Harvard team that we're used to seeing, just with a new head coach.
Yeah, and as I was saying, I think that continuity piece, keeping the majority of the staff. I mean, this has been a very good staff here for years under Tim Murphy, and keeping Larkey, keeping Lamb, keeping Mickey Fine as the offensive coordinator. I think it's huge. I think it's huge in this program. It's not only continuity for the players, but these guys have proven track records of success. This has been a very good program for a long time. So if that track record of success wasn't there, yeah, maybe you make the wholesale changes and really mix things up with the staff, but it's been there. And when you look at the Ivy League and how competitive it is year in and year out, of course, last year you had a 4-way tie in essence. You got Dartmouth and Yale, who are both going to be pretty good. They're in the midst of spring ball right now. But as you said, Kevin, and I agree wholeheartedly, Harvard's going to be in the mix like they are every year. They're going to be a preseason top 3, top 4 program again in the Ivy League preseason poll. That they're going to be pretty good. And Xavier Bascon, if you remember him as a high school running back, great. But if you don't remember him, get to know the name, because I think he is primed for a big 2-year run here. He's going to have a good career at Harvard. Now, Adam and I, of course, on Saturday made the sojourn out to Amherst for our spring visit with the UMass Minutemen. And it was, to be honest with you, and I think Adam would agree with me, it was hard to get a lot out of that practice. I mean, they were pretty banged up. Tyson Fomachon did not practice. They had 3 or 4 receivers out. Obviously, you got the running back room is thin with the departures of K'Ron Lynch-Adams and Greg DeRozier's. It was hard to gauge what this football team is going to look like the rest of the spring and what they could look like going into fall camp. I think they're going to be drastically different because I think they're going to go hard in the portal next week. But my takeaway was Don Brown, he's kind of sitting back now, kind of more of a CEO overseeing things. The coordinators and the position coaches are running the show. There were some bright spots on offense. There were some bright spots on defense, but I don't know if there's enough there early on. There's still plenty of offseason left, but early on, not sure there's enough there for me to say that this is a team that can win 3 more games and be bowl eligible.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Again, it's sort of, it's just one practice, but the guy that caught my eye maybe the most out of the guys that were there was Ahmad Haston, the quarterback, who's probably going to be the backup quarterback. But, I mean, you can see the athleticism. You can see the arm strength. He really whips it out there. He's a good player. But then other than that, like, you're looking out there, they have a mix of guys that have been there a while, like Ethan Moninger from North Attleboro, who's the offensive right guard, starting right guard, and has been for the last couple of years. But you see a lot of portal guys. Like a lot of guys that were in the portal are like starting or making a big impact right away. So you can tell that they targeted these guys. These guys aren't there by mistake.
The 2 starting tackles are going to be portal guys.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, say what you will about the portal. I think Don Brown is really going there and looking for playmakers, looking for difference makers, and I think they have it. And the other guy a couple of the other guys we talked about, Anthony Simpson, the wide receiver. Again, I think he's going to have a huge year. He's probably their best receiver. He's going to be, I think, a senior. I think Jalen John is the other guy who looked good at running back. He's just a good, stout kid. So I'm excited to see all these guys. But I agree with you. I don't see this team making a huge jump. They haven't made a huge jump talent-wise that I can see. But, it's all going to be in those 50-50 games. Like, can they win those games against teams they should be able to be in the game with? They have to win a lot of those to get bowl eligibility.
So I have 2 questions for both of you. One, John, you mentioned you think the offense is going to be different. I'm just curious what your thoughts were on the new or how the new OC ran things, at least from a practice perspective. And then 2, with those departures in the running back room, those were 2 huge names on this team. Was there any sense of sort of like, I guess, a down vibe? Because the last 2 years that we've been there in the spring, it's been high, for lack of a better term, high octane. There's been a certain vibe there when we've gone to practice. Was it sort of, I guess, lessened in any way?
Well, I mean, to answer your first question in regards to what was your first question?
The new look offense.
The new look offense. Thank you. Well, look, Shane Montgomery's teams, even when he was in the MAC, they're going to run the football. They're going to play physical. And I thought that they ran the football well with all 3 units. I thought they did a pretty nice job. And again, that's a depleted running back room. But Adam mentioned Jalen John. I thought he looked pretty good. He ran hard. He ran balanced. He ran with a good pad level. He showed some nice burst on the outside. I think he's a guy that's going to be in the mix. He's going to get carries regardless of what they do with that room the rest of this offseason. In regards to the running back situation and the vibe, it didn't seem to us that it was that much of a surprise that Lynch Adams left. I think people are surprised DeRozier's did, especially because he would have been in line to be the guy. And again, I don't want to speculate, but the vibe I got was that he was going to get more carries, more touches this year. So I think that there's disappointment there for sure that both of those guys left, specifically DeRozier's. As far as, the vibe and up-tempo, Adam and I talked about this throughout the practice. We thought it was slow, and it looked to me like it was a big teaching day. And with the number of guys, specifically skill guys that were out, that they're going to be counting on, it probably was a slower day than usual because you're repping a lot of 2s and 3s at wide receiver, at running back, and you have to slow things down for them. So there was probably a lot more teaching than usual. If your upperclassmen are practicing, then and they understand football at a higher level and they're ahead in the install, your pace of practice will be better. Guys will be moving around. They'll be flying around. Practice will move faster. But there's no question. I think Montgomery's a good coach. I think he's going to run an offense that's going to fit the MAC and what they want to do in the MAC, especially moving forward. They have predominantly a MAC schedule. But like Adam and I were saying, you're still playing 3 SEC teams. Missouri comes here. You go to Mississippi State. You go to Georgia. I mean, yeah, you're going to play a predominantly MAC schedule, and, you sprinkle in Central Connecticut State, and you still have Liberty, and you still have UConn. But, the way I look at it, you mentioned a guy like Anthony Simpson. It's going to be in those games. He's going to have to play big in those SEC games if he wants to get drafted next year. He has the physical tools, but if he doesn't put some good tape out there in those 3 games specifically, he probably won't get drafted. He'll probably be a priority free agent.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with what you said about the running backs. It didn't make a lot of sense to me that both guys would leave. Again, because when one guy leaving, another guy has an opportunity. But again, like during the practice itself, you didn't see really whether or not that was an issue because guys just move on. So I think, with the offense, I think we saw one practice. Hard to say exactly how different. I think given the guys that they have, it would be smart to utilize a lot of quarterback runs and zone reads and stuff like that. And I think they have the personnel for it. But if you want me to say, like, okay, we were at UConn the week before, compare and contrast. Well, I would say that UConn was a little bit further along when we saw them than UMass was when we saw them, if that makes any sense. So I kind of feel like UConn had their full complement of guys. It seemed like if with a few exceptions, but I thought UConn just seemed a little bit more further along than UMass. Again, that doesn't mean much because it's still April, but that's sort of my observation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is defensively, I like what they have up front. You're gonna have to figure out a way to replace Billy Wooden, but I like their linebacking core. I like that they brought in Macklin Ayers. I think the Dartmouth transfer he's going to be a good player for them. The secondary has a lot of big question marks. So because really the only guy you bring back is Teray Powell, and they went hard in the portal with the secondary. The guy that they added that I love is Lake Ellis from Bryant. Multi-year starter at Bryant. I thought he had a really good practice. I thought he did a great job against Anthony Simpson. They challenged Ellis a couple of times on those fade balls, and he was pretty competitive. He competed there. Another guy that got my attention was Ryan Barnes, a Notre Dame transfer. He's another long corner, 6'2 plus, 190 pounds. He's another guy that fits that press man-to-man Don Brown style where they're going to bring pressure and play man behind it. He looked pretty good. So there's going to be a lot of new faces in that secondary. But Ellis, Barnes, these guys are good football players. They're going to be able to step in and replace a Wallace and a Mahoney from the last 2 years and give this secondary some length and playmaking ability, something they desperately need, especially on the outside. Of course, spring football is actually starting to wind down here now. We're in April. We've got 3 spring games this week. Thursday night, we have Merrimack. Our Ryan Barry is going to be there for that one. Saturday, Kevin, you and I are going to be at Boston College. Then you're going to be at Holy Cross for their spring game. And then URI also has their spring game on Saturday. So it's hard to believe that the spring is winding down already. But just some general thoughts on those games, starting with Boston College. What can we expect to see from the Eagles, Kevin?
So it's a good question. The other day, they had a scrimmage with legitimately about 200, 300 people in the building, and they went hard for over 2 hours. And Bill O'Brien, when I've asked him now 2 different times, he said it's going to be live. It'll be structured like a practice where they work on situational football, and there'll be some game elements. It won't be a full 3-hour football game, but they're going to go wide, they're going to go hard, and be ready to be impressed with what you see. Adam, I know you watched the practice with me, and the offense is, I don't know if we've seen an offense like this at BC in a long, long time. You could tell, better than I would, but just the talent that they have on offense and the depth they have on both sides of the ball, I think it'll stand out on Saturday. It's supposed to be a nice day. Hopefully there's a big crowd, but I don't know how live they'll really go. Again, they've gone hard in practice, but O'Brien's talked the game up a lot. So I'm hoping it's full contact and they're flying around. But overall, it's just, look, I know I talk a lot in hyperbole. You won't recognize this team. And Adam, again, you can back me up on this. They are very, very different from what we've seen the last few years. And I'm hoping we get the full sort of show on display that the media has been lucky enough to see at practice. But it's been a very productive, 3-4 week, whatever it is, 5-week spring season for them. And I'm hoping we get to see a lot of that talent on display inside the stadium on Saturday, but should be a fun day.
I think with spring, what I feel about with spring games is they're not a scrimmage, they're a show. You're there to put on entertaining football for the recruits that go to the game, for the fans that go to the game, the parents, whatever. I mean, it's a show. So you like with a spring game, you want the offense to look good. Because if they don't look good in the spring game, it's hard to imagine them looking good during a season, or at least in the fans' mind. That's kind of what it is. So you just want to have a good looking show for the fans, for the recruits. You want these recruits to think, I could be in that place. I could be that wide receiver. I could be that running back, whatever. But and I think that he's been at places like that. Like when you're the coach at Penn State and you have a spring game, you want the offense to look good. When you're at Alabama, you want the offense to look good. So that's kind of what spring games are for. Like people don't come out of a spring game raving about the defense. They don't want to. They want to see a show. They want to see offense. And I think that's what he's going to try to do in that first one for him.
Although, Adam, just to that point, I think this fan base would like to see the defense fly around. You know what I mean? And in fairness, it's been back and forth all throughout training camp, particularly up front. Netawak Paula and Donovan Ezeraku have been flying around, and Cam Horsley as well has been impressive. So, and Amari Jackson looks like a number one corner. So I think, yeah, you want to see the offense perform well. Like people want to go see Bradley and Ward and Morales and all these new guys stand out. But I do think that fan base would like to see some highlights on the defense. And just one other thing, do not expect to see Kai Robichaud, Alex Broom, or Lewis Bond. All three have been a little bit banged up. I don't think it's anything serious, but I can't imagine they'll want to risk that on Saturday. But overall, you should still get some pretty good entertainment on offense.
And what can we expect from the Holy Cross spring game?
Good question. I'm curious to see how Dan Curran chooses to run it. His Merrimack ones again were usually sort of more situational than anything else. And John, again, you've ran scrimmages. It's really all about controlled situations and making sure guys have reps in those critical, 2 minutes or minute to go, one time out, need a field goal to win, stuff like that. So, but in terms of on the field. Look, you're replacing Jalen Coker and Matt Sluka and Jacob Dobbs. Like there's some big questions to be answered there. So I think there's more questions to be answered with Holy Cross, whereas BC, it's just more of again, like Adam said, putting on a show. Holy Cross, I think they're gonna want to get some answers within their own program about what they need to do moving forward.
Yeah, and URI, of course, you're going to have the quarterback competition to keep an eye on. Devin Farrell, the Virginia Tech transfer. Hunter Helms, the Clemson transfer. Also going to have to keep an eye on that offensive line. There's going to be some competition up front going well into fall camp in terms of who they're going to play along the offensive line. And defensively, a lot of key starters, especially in that secondary. They have moved on. There's going to be an onus on the secondary. Up front, you got AJ Pena back, but there's a lot of new faces up front as well. But as Jim Fleming told us a couple of weeks ago when we did our spring visit with the Rams, he likes what he has back. They like what they have back. So it should be a pretty good competition. And as I mentioned, our Ryan Barry will be at Mike Giannetti's first spring game on Thursday night as the head football coach at Merrimack. He'll have his observations on that game. And we still have spring visits coming up. We still have to head out to Stonehill, Brown. We're trying to get down to Sacred Heart and CCSU and Yale. We're hoping we can get there. And we're also going to be at UNH. And we're hoping to also get to Dartmouth, Maine. We've reached out to some feelers. We're hoping we can give the Black Bears some spring coverage. If we don't get someone on site, we'll certainly have some content up on the Black Bears. All right, gentlemen, final thoughts here as we wrap this up.
The other day, Boston College offered Micah Amity of Xaverian. He's a defensive tackle, defensive lineman. To the best of if he's not the first, he's one of the first MIAA players to get offered by this new look administration. So a really good player. Really happy that he got offered. He's a young kid. He's not like an 18-year-old, I think he's like 16 or 17 still. And he had an awesome junior year for Xaverian, the D1 state champ. So really happy for him and Coach Alfanaro.
Yeah, nothing for me. Just stick with us on Saturday. We'll have, again, plenty of football. It'll be sort of like a dry run for September in terms of our football coverage on Saturday. So full day Saturday, and we'll have updates on the Patriots this week as well.
Yep. Tons to cover, and we'll be covering it all. And keep an eye out for my top 50 Patriots prospects reports. I watch film on all these guys, and I break it down and give you my little scouting report on all of them. Most of the guys will be guys that they've either spoken to at bowl games, the combine, or have had pro day or top 30 visits with. I might throw a couple of guys in there that I think could be potentially on their radar. We're also going to be talking about Patriots needs this week as well. And we got a couple more mock drafts to throw up there as well. So plenty of Patriots content coming up in the next 2 weeks ahead of the draft, which commences on April 25th. Just a reminder, I'll have Jason Matry on Field the Draft with me here in the next few minutes. So the former Everett High School standout, Boston College and Wisconsin cornerback will be joining me in about 10 minutes on Field the Draft. That'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone and Adam Kirch, and I'm John Sarianides. Till next week, peace.